Hi there. I've been having some audio visual issues, so I wanted to test. Looks like I'm okay. Should I leave until the meeting starts? You can't hear me, do you? Can you? Testing, testing. I'll leave and come back. I'm not able to hear you, Robin. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me now? I think, oh, okay.
Yes, we
It was
can.
me, Liz. I was the problem.
Well,
I
that's
got
the first
Kara
time
here to
all
help
day
me.
it's been someone else.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
You have. Oh, okay.
The live stream.
It was me, Liz. I was the problem.
It
Well,
never
that's the
happens.
first time all day it's been someone else.
Can you hear me now?
You
Yeah.
had the live stream.
You have. Oh, okay.
The live stream.
It was me, Liz. I was the problem.
It
Well,
never
that's the
happens.
first time all day it's been someone else.
Yeah, Liz. Can you hear me now?
You had the live stream.
You have. Oh, okay.
The live stream.
It was me, Liz. I was the problem. Just leave that phone.
Minimize what you want.
That's what I did before.
Leave it to more, not, so you can see your meeting better.
God.
I'm gonna open on my computer too.
Okay. I was having trouble
Your audio still getting to everybody, just.
sharing my screen. Welcome, everyone. Having some technical difficulties, just getting all set up here. We're waiting for a few more committee members to join, and then we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. We're just waiting one more minute to see if any other committee members join us. Welcome. One person is named Campaign for Equal Justice. Do you want to rename yourself your name?
Yes, sorry. I am trying to do that right now.
There's those three little dots in the upper right corner.
I'm on my phone and it's harder on my phone. But yeah, I got it.
All right. I think we will get started. We may have a couple of folks joining us, and I'll keep an eye on the list to let them in. So I will open the meeting at 5:34. Meeting of the Parent Advisory Committee for the distribution of donations for staffing. Committee that reports to the Board of Education. My name is Robin Ferrone. I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships and staffing the committee. So I'm going to get started with some of the slides for our agenda for this evening. So this is the agenda that you saw in the calendar invite and is posted publicly on the PAC committee webpage on pps.net. All materials for the meeting are viewable on that webpage. For members of the public, this meeting is being live streamed on PPS's YouTube channel and will be recorded and posted live for public meeting compliance rules. So our we have a couple of committee members who were not able to make the last meeting on February 12th, and they are joining us this evening. So I wanted to start by giving them an opportunity to introduce themselves, like we did in the last meeting. And they were able to watch the previous meeting, so they probably saw you introducing yourselves. So the way that we did that is your name, pronouns, the schools that your child attends or has attended in the past, so current and previous if they were PPS schools. And then if you wanted to share like a rose and a thorn, so it'd be like something that is going really well or that you appreciate about your child's experience and a challenge, perhaps. So, Sun Lee, would you like to start? You would just
Yeah.
need to unmute yourself, and when you start talking, your name will appear on the screen.
Okay. My name is Sun Lee. He, him.
Oh, we're not able to hear you. Doesn't look like you're muted though. Do you have headphones attached?
Robin, I can hear Sun. Can
So
others?
Everybody,
Yeah.
can others hear me?
I can hear.
I can hear you.
no. Are
I
other
heard him
people
as
able
well.
to hear? Is it just me?
I think so. I think it's just you. Robin, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, son.
Trina, why don't we go to you and see if yours is working?
Robin, we can hear Sun.
Yeah, I could hear him too.
Can Robin hear us?
I don't think she can hear any of us.
I'm not
Yeah.
able to hear other people. Is it me or?
Mm.
Oh, okay. All right, you go ahead and start your introduction and I will troubleshoot on my end.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name's Sun Lee. He, him. I have a daughter who's a sophomore or freshman at Franklin High School. They attended Sunnyside K through 8. And, one of the reasons I felt like joining the committee, I just thought it'd be an interesting process to join, as well as, I've had friends, their children go to Marysville, for example, and, they weren't able to fundraise and acquire funds like many other schools did, and, at Sunnyside, we were able to raise money. And I thought this just be an interesting process to see how it would work and then see if it'd be successful or not. As far as thorns go, I would say, like many of you, class sizes have always been an issue. I think, at Sunnyside K8, on average, class sizes were 30, sometimes 35 people at times. It felt like I think the smallest class my daughter had there was 29. As far as Rose goes, I thought the transition to high school would be tougher for her coming from a K8, but it's been going well. And, Franklin is just 5 minutes from our house, so that makes it very easy for her to get back and forth from school. So that's been a positive, and right now she's working on a study abroad application for 3 weeks for high school students.
I guess I'll go next. My name is Katrina Huff, and trying to make sure I remember all of the questions. My daughter attends Benson High School. She is a freshman this year. Previously, she attended Vernon for middle school, and she did Kairos, a charter school for elementary school. And uh, the reason why I joined the committee was I've always been an involved parent. Um, and it's hard for me now, I think, in the role that I'm in my new job, to kind of attend like direct school related events. And so I still wanted to make sure that I was able to give my time and give my time in a meaningful way. And this seemed like an interesting next up from like the school level participation. And the role that I have, so I'm a financial and accounting manager for a investment fund, and we fund the Albina neighborhood in the Black community of Portland. And in that, um, part of my job is knowing and understanding how finances work outside of the work that we do, and how are we funding schools, and what does that mean, and what impact can we really have on our communities. And so this seemed like a natural step for me. So that is why I decided to come here. I feel like I'm forgetting a question, and if anyone wants to jump in and remind me. That's okay.
Did you share your rose and your thorn?
Okay. Yep. Thank you. So my rose is I am a Portland native, and so and we moved around a lot as a kid, so I've been to a lot of different Portland public schools, and so I've just been able to see the progression and just the different tools and things that are available for kids versus when I was, growing up. And I see the work and I see the dedication. So I love that. I think my thorn runs the same as Soon is class sizes can be a challenge, especially for a kid like mine that is very easily distracted by her peers. So the more there are, the more chances that she has to be distracted. And she's a very social kid, and she's a very uh, emphatic. So if anybody is going through anything, she feels like it's her duty to investigate and make them feel better. And so it's a good trait to have. It's kind of not the best for a classroom setting. So it's kind of been difficult managing that, just the large size. When she was in elementary school, I think the charter school class size was like 20 kids, 22 kids. So to go from that to like 30 was a little bit of a jump. And so just those were the things that I noticed the most, is that classroom size does affect.
So
Audio. See a little drop up, pop up. Yeah. So see how that says Mac for your microphone, but it doesn't say Mac right here.
Robin, we can hear you guys talking.
sorry, I got it fixed now. Sorry.
Oh, but you heard us, so that's really great.
Okay, I'm very sorry. Trina, were you finished?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, the next order of business is to vote on the minutes from the previous meeting. Were people able to open that on the link? So this will be for people who didn't attend the meeting will abstain from this vote, but the order of business is for one person to move to motion to approve unless there are any edits. So you can just unmute.
Could you put that link in the chat again? I'm not seeing it.
Okay,
I'll move to approve the minutes.
who is that spoke?
Isla making a motion to approve the
Okay.
minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. I have to note it. Okay, let me,
It's Sachin, and I'll second the motion.
okay. Thank you. Hang on one second. Let me put the link in the chat.
Do we have a chat because it's a public meeting?
We are in a webinar and then we're live streaming on YouTube, but I am not seeing the chat.
I don't see a chat either. Can you
I
just
don't know.
It's because it wouldn't be visible to the public, so
just go back to the this pack page?
Yes, and yes, it's on the PAC page under the 212. I can also share the screen with the minutes too. Second.
Thank you.
Is that showing now? Minutes?
It's showing.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so basically they're pretty brief. We just it's basically like a short sentence for each topic, who was in attendance, and then a short, discussion of the different topics. So not very detailed as how we're supposed to do these, because there's also the video record. So that's it. Are we able to take a vote? Is everyone in favor of the minutes? Anyone saying no?
I have a question because I don't really do this a lot.
Mhm.
If I make a motion or second a motion, am I presumed to be approving it and so I don't vote yay? Or do I still have to vote separately? Not really clear on that part.
That's a good question. You are already voting for it, so you don't need to
Yeah.
say it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you. Okay, so I think the minutes passed. All right. Let me go back. I did skip a slide. Let me go back here. Things are a little frazzled today. Sorry. So the other order of business we have is the chair and co-chair. But I would like to table that for a moment and go to our presenter, Liz Gilkey, who has been waiting since 5:30 to give her presentation. Does that sound all right with everyone? We will come back to that. Okay, great. Let me, Liz, do you need me to share your slides for you?
I think I can pull it off. I think I figured it out.
Okay.
I'm a little dark, so I'll try. That did not help. Hello, my name is Liz Gilkey. I'm going to share my screen, I think, if I can figure this out. Oh, may I take over and share the screen? I sent a request. There we go. Okay. Can everybody see the Together We Rise slide? Yes? Okay. Excellent. Okay. Thank you for your time. I'm Dr. Liz Gilkey. My pronouns are she, her. I manage the research and evaluation team in the Research Assessment and Accountability Department of the Office of Equity and Accountability. My team is responsible for conducting research and program evaluations in the district, including administering large-scale surveys. Today, I will discuss the results from the Community Priorities Survey. In today's presentation, we'll give you big picture highlights of what we learned from the survey, and you also received the slides in advance, which includes an appendix that has a deeper dive into the data. Please reserve your questions until the end of the presentation. When we get there, you're welcome to refer to the appendix or what I present tonight. And I can't see my screen shared with you, so I'm going to assume you can. Yes? Okay, good. All right. And let me see. And can you now see a really cute little kid? Yes. Okay, we're on the right slide. Wonderful. We administered the Community Priorities Survey between October 21st and November 30th. We had really good participation. We heard from different sectors of our community. In all, nearly 4,000 people responded, including parents, who are our largest group of respondents at about 70%. PPS staff and administrators were at about 20%, and then students and members of the community made up the difference. We shared results of the survey with our key budget decision makers to use in the early conversations about budget priorities. And then we conducted additional engagement activities throughout the fall and winter to gather more feedback and further refine the decisions we made. We asked survey participants if they recommended that PPS eliminate a few programs or reduce services across programs. Participants recommended we eliminate a few programs. They also emphasized the importance of classroom instruction, teaching and learning over community partnerships and extracurricular activities. 48% of participants would recommend PPS to a friend or colleague looking for a school or district. And I apologize, I do have dogs here at home. We asked, how well do you feel PPS is currently doing in the following areas? Student achievement, diversity and inclusion, classroom instruction, hiring and retaining high quality staff, school culture and climate, physical buildings and facilities, community partnerships, school leadership, and student extracurricular activities. As you can see, participants reported that PPS was doing best in diversity and inclusion, and the lowest rated was student achievement. We then asked, for PPS to be successful over the next 3 years, how important is it to focus on those same 9 categories? And participants rated classroom instruction as the most important area of focus. The lowest rated was community partnerships. We received 1,789 open-ended comments on the survey. The research and evaluation team read and analyzed each of these comments. First, we used an a priori or closed coding process, which means that we took the 9 themes that we had asked folks to rank in those previous slides, for example, student achievement, diversity and inclusion, classroom instruction, and so on. And we looked for those 9 themes in the open-ended comments. Then we went back through and looked for other themes that emerged in addition to those 9. So this slide shows the percentage of the 1,789 comments that were coded by theme. As you can see, hiring and retaining high quality staff was the most frequently mentioned theme, with 18% of comments referring to staffing. The next highest rated was classroom instruction, with 12% of comments. Diversity and inclusion was mentioned in 11%. After we coded the comments for those 9 categories, as I said, we went back through the data and looked for additional themes. That's called open coding. We saw many comments related to the visual and performing arts, special education, and then more general budget concerns. We asked, if you could change one thing about this school or district, what would it be? The most frequently suggested change was to reduce class sizes. We also heard suggestions to hire and support quality personnel like classroom teachers, support staff, and paraeducators. And we heard to fully fund and prioritize special education. When asked what is the single most positive aspect of the school or district, caring teachers was the most frequently reported. Strong and supportive school communities was mentioned. We also heard about access to school special programs, for example, language immersion, arts, music, culture, and sports. People also celebrated the diversity in our district. Thank you. Now I would like to open it up for questions. I see that Sashin, I hope I pronounced your name right, has your hand up. And anyone else who'd like to ask questions?
I have a few questions. First, about the data. Do you have like a report of the data that we could see that breaks down what the concerns were by group? Like
Good
if
thing you
more
asked.
educators.
Yes, we have that in the appendix. So you can start to look at how everyone rated each of these things. So here's that student achievement question around for us to be successful over the next few years, how important is it for us to focus on student achievement? And then this is how the different groups rated that. That's all in the appendix.
Okay, and then secondarily, the breakdown at the start that said the percentage of respondents added up to I think 95%. The very first one was like
Yeah,
70-20 to begin
I
to.
think
Was
it
like,
was,
is
yeah,
the 5%
okay.
just rounding errors, or
Those are
is that
probably
like
rounding errors. And I'll show you this slide, which will go into that a little more deeply. So you can see here in this category on the far right, that's our overall. So it did kind of split out. There were some folks who didn't answer the question. And then we took each of these categories and carried those through. Great questions. Sorry, I missed your hands up. I see Suzanne has her hand up.
Yeah, with regard to the demographics of the responses, in your opinion, how does that impact the prioritization? So how can I articulate this? If you have 70% of respondents being white, and that's not in line with the percentage of white members of the PPS community, then what do you do in terms of, or do you do anything to try to align the responses to more accurately represent the actual demographics of PPS?
It's a really good question. And one of the things we try to do is split the data into different demographic groups and then look at how folks respond. So you won't see this in this slide, but if you, I'll share a link where you can go look at the data a little more deeply. Or I'm sorry, that's in my next presentation. We won't have a link here. This is all we're going to have, but we do what we do with this data was we did have a smaller deck where we shared out what folks based on their demographic characteristics shared with us. So for example, we would share, this is what families of color are saying to really highlight that, and so they don't get whitewashed, in other words, by the larger group of white parents. It's a good question. I kind of stumbled over the response because I forgot which data you had available to you, but we really try to honor the voices of our families of color, knowing that at times the folks who are able to respond to surveys will be underrepresented. And I see a hand up. I see Niche Architecture Studio. I may not have pronounced that right.
Right. Yeah, no, it's Gnick, and I forgot to change my name to Audrey. Okay, I have renamed myself. My question was regarding the community partnerships, and like I just don't have a definition on what that means and how that what that interaction is looking like through the PPS lens in this slide deck.
It's a really good question, and we did not define it for people. So it was really how the member of the community or the parent or staff member interpreted that. In comments, we kind of heard both business partnerships, the partnerships with our our community-based organizations, a full range of partnerships.
Right. I guess I'm curious. It ranks really lowly, and I feel like it's something that like maybe in our current generation that is lacking with our community's relationship with our educational programs. And if it wasn't defined and nobody had an idea of how that was aligning with PPS, like would that have fed differently if we had said, I know for instance, Alameda has had a foundation the last couple of years, and the community has been a huge advocate in those donations. And so, and like we do other fundraising through our PTA where they step up. And so I'm just,
yeah,
I don't want to undermine the community's involvement, but I was just curious where that was directed. If
I think when I see this slide that I'm sharing now around community partnerships, it speaks to exactly what you're sharing, that we know that community members who responded to this might be partners, and administrators and teaching staff and non-teaching staff and students will have more touch with those partnerships. They'll have more connections, and so those folks rated it more highly than parents did. And so I do think when we kind of see it broken out like this, we see what you're sharing, that there might be a knowledge gap a little bit around what people responded to. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I think Sachin, you had your hand up first. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. I noticed that seemingly students care about extracurriculars at a significantly, like around 80% compared
Yes,
to,
further down.
yeah, which is very high. And I think potentially the data of people caring about extracurriculars seems to just be washed out by the fact that there's only like 3% of students are respondents. And even though parents
Yeah.
are a lot, like it's interesting to note that a lot of parents are saying it's important, students are saying important, but everyone else isn't as much. And I'm wondering like if the response of less people caring just kind of washes out the amount of people that might care that are actually in school. Same with like school climate and keeping teachers and stuff being less important to students and teachers who are in the classrooms and actually getting the experience of learning or teaching.
Yeah.
Oh.
Suzanne, I think you had your hand up as well. No, okay. Any other thoughts or questions here?
Was there a response to Sessions observation?
I'm sorry, Sasha. It was a really good observation. I don't really know how to, I mean, you made a really good point, kind of like mic drop, It is true that was only I think we had 1.8% of people were students, and we would see that larger group of folks kind of wash out their data. Because you're right, parents and students here were heads and tails over the rest of the group when it comes to extracurriculars.
I'm just curious this session, if you have like, from a student's perspective of why you're asking that question. I would like some insight of, I'm interested to hear.
So I go to IW Wells, and we have a very, very large like track and cross country team. And I did that, you know, first year, second year. I don't do that as much now, but it's like it's interesting to me that you have this very small percentage of student respondents, but that doesn't like the rating of extracurriculars seem to be really low compared to everything else. And I was like, wow, like more than half of the people at my school are doing extracurriculars probably. So why is the respondent percentage so low? So I went into the data and I was like, okay, students and then teachers, and it's like solid 30% more than everyone else. So I'm like, I wonder if that's like just getting washed away a little bit.
It's important to look through the appendix and kind of tease out that nuance and think through those questions. It's, I think, you know, were we to have sort of like isolated surveys with each group, we might see different findings, but here we combine it all. So you're right, the larger group would kind of wash everybody out. But I hope you can dig in and look through the open-ended, like their responses too, because we chose quotes that were representative of what other folks were saying, or just sort of really good points to try to further elucidate what folks were saying. Any other thoughts or questions on this survey? I see David has your hand up. Oh, you're muted. Oh, there we
Yeah,
go.
hi. In one of the later slides, there were recommendations, three recommendations specifically. One was reduce class size, two, hire support quality educators, and then the third one was fully fund and prioritize special ed. And you know, I'm sorry that I don't know more about it, but when you say special ed, that seems like a very broad term. And maybe you can just describe what that might entail in a little more detail.
Yeah, so these were comments that said things like, we need to make sure that we have enough paraeducators in our classrooms to support our students with disabilities. Or we need to make sure that we have enough special education teachers in our classrooms to fully support those students. And that's also a law, so it's not just a good idea, it's the law. And we do prioritize that, but it's also really great to hear from our community that that's a priority as well. Oh, there's Sachin. Do you have another question?
Sorry to keep asking. So I know during the strike, we had like at some point during the contract, they have to have like a clarification on some level of improvement to special education programs. I was curious if you know whether that started to make an impact yet, or if it's just like too recent to really make an effect. And then also I thought I'd add to kind of give some information to David. Special education, at least in my school, a lot of the kids are like kind of disruptive and don't necessarily, they need like someone to kind of help them so that they're not getting everyone else off track. And often they'll have like classes that are separate so that people can teach them, because it's like everyone else can't learn if someone is just, I don't know, like very disruptive. And like we have kids like walking around the halls like kind of screaming every now and then, like because we just don't have the educators and the paraeducators to like help these kids, and they're just not enough teachers in that like zone to really do the stuff.
Would you remind me of your question? I have already forgotten it.
Oh, I was curious, the strike, we had like some, I know that there was like some environment stuff, and one of the big issues was like special education, and we ended up getting like
Thank you. That
like
was outside of the purview of this presentation, and so we didn't prepare any information for you about that. It's great to know you're curious. And you asked, I remember now, you asked, is it too soon? It is too soon. We do not yet have data to show the effects of that. What I will say that I know is that we are not impacting our special education program in this round of cuts, from what I understand. We're really trying to prioritize keeping those educators in schools and make our cuts elsewhere as wherever possible, because it is so important. Suzanne?
I just want to add that special education is a very broad term, and it entails multiple subsets of student community. And it can be students with physical disabilities, it can be learning challenges, it can be the federal law has that students can get an IEP, which is an individual education plan. And so there can be accommodations made depending on what that student needs for additional supports. And that may include an aid, which is like an aid to that would supports that particular student, which in PPS it's the employee classification is called a paraeducator. So that is where the some of the comments are, is that we need more of those folks helping certain students. It can also be things like ADHD or dyslexia, or so it's a whole broad spectrum of under the term of SPED. So I just wanted to add that context, that we don't know exactly which parameters folks were responding to, but saying that their additional resources are needed. Suzanne, did you have another question?
How is the district using this survey data, and what weight does the district give it when making budget decisions? And just as an add-on, is the intention today for us to discuss this survey? Is it so that we understand the community budget priorities going forward? And in that understanding that, it'll inform how we might focus the foundation dollars?
Yeah, that was the goal of, I mean, this is a point in time that, you know, that the survey was given. It was in October, right, Liz, of this school year, so 2024. I had some requests, more from staff maybe than from committee members, that perhaps we consider doing a survey, and we wanted to look at the surveys we already have, the data we already have, you know, and provide it as additional context for individual perspectives and experience, just as additional kind of context that wouldn't preclude you from having conversations from other parents in your community, or talking with your principal, you know, as we are, you know, continuing this work to flesh out any of this information. But it's just context setting for the committee members.
And I'll add that I think one thing you could use the data for is just sort of those relative importance and focus area rankings. So seeing that student achievement, diversity, classroom instruction is the highest rated here, and then hiring and retaining high quality staff, that can help you think through your priorities as well. And that is how this was a very early round. We didn't continue to collect information from folks all fall and winter. So this was just that first cut.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gilkey, for sharing this survey. And it looks like we have one more question from Casey. Is this for Dr. Gilkey, your question? And then we're going to move on to the other. She has another brief slide deck, and then we're going to go to our other guest speaker, and we'll come back to the other slides that I had at the end, sort of changing the order of things because of my technical challenges today. Okay.
And I'll add, I'm going to very quickly turn on my light.
Okay. Yes, it's getting dark out. Great. So, Dr. Gilkey's office also administers another survey that we wanted her to mention very briefly, and that will lead into our other speaker who is also joined us, Dr. Carmen Williams. So we'll get to hear about what she has to say, and we'll let Dr. Gilkey go after she presents her slides so we don't keep her here all night.
Well, thank you very much. And this is really brief. You thought that last one was quick. Well, here we go. Some of you may already be familiar with the Successful Schools Survey as you are parents and students who have probably participated. So some of this may be old news to you, but I'm going to really quickly give you some highlights of Successful Schools, tell you what it is, and a link to where you can actually look at the data. I'm not going to go into the data today. I want to give more time to Dr. Williams, who has a lot to share with you today. So as many of you know, we have been administering Successful Schools every year since 2018-19. It goes out to all students who are in grades 3 and up, every family, school-based staff, and school leaders. And this year it was open from November 1st to December 16th. And we're going to try to keep it going in November going forward because it coincides with parent-teacher conferences. And so we're able to kind of use that time to help parents access the survey. This year we heard from over 21,000 students, 4,684 family members, 3,228 staff, that's both instructional and non-instructional staff, and 138 leaders, and those are building principals, and we ask for at least one principal from each school to participate. So very good participation. Compared to last year, our participants reported more favorably to questions regarding school climate and school safety. Families in particular reported more favorably regarding family-school communication and school fit. And here's where you can access the publicly facing report. You can dig in, you can look at all the different surveys, the student, family, staff surveys. You can look at every question split out by demographics. You can see how people of color responded. And really dig in there. We're not going to do that today, but I also want to really quickly share with you how we use these results, because I know that's important to you as one of your last questions. We use the results in a variety of ways. Many departments at PPS take the data and use them for their work. In schools, our principals use them to develop their school continuous improvement plans, SKIP plans. And that's a process of collecting data and setting goals for your school. And we also use them to improve school culture through our social emotional learning programs and other targeted kind of interventions. It's used by I was just at a meeting at Grant with our student success teams. They use the data to think about student belonging at schools. And we really try to use it in a variety of ways to help improve climate and culture at PPS. And I'm not going to go too much into it. There will be another board presentation in the future, so we don't want to, steal their thunder. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And Sasha, I do see your hand is up.
So the link requires a login. What are we doing?
Oh,
Is there like
you
a collective
shouldn't have
account?
to log in.
Or
Let me,
yeah, they both.
are you, okay, that's good to know. I tried to send you the public link, but I must not have. I can share that with Robin. If you Google PPS successful schools, you get to a PPS website that has a link that you can use to access the data. And I apologize because I must have accidentally been logged in when I created that link. But I can share that with Robin and get that to you. I know that was really fast. Okay, well, I am going to turn it to Dr. Williams if I can figure out how to stop sharing my screen.
Thank you and good evening all. And then as she figures out how to leave, there we go. Then I will figure out how I can launch myself. One moment, let me share.
I can do it for you, Carmen. I think you might
You
have
want to take a shot at it, but for the sake of time, I am going to skip this video.
Okay.
If any of you have additional questions, please share them with Robin. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thanks.
You got it, Robin?
It's like, let's see. Oh,
It's your computer.
oh, that's not right. Okay.
Well, I'll go ahead and start and we'll jump into this. Wow, now we can see you. So I'm Dr. Carmen Williams. I'm currently the director of community schools here in PBS. Previous to this position, this school year, I was the Fabian principal for a long time, and I was at Fabian at the helm for about 8 years. Before that, I was in Park Rose. I was a math and science teacher at the high school. Well, yeah, go to the second slide. Math and science teacher at the high school level. I also ran an alternative program. I coached varsity boys distance running for a long time, and launched a night school, was a union lead. And so I did a lot out there. In here in PPS, besides being the principal at Fabian and the director of community schools, I'm also the PAPSA president. We're going to go to the next slide. So there's some pictures of community school, and you'll see. So the community school model. So it's a innovative new model for Oregon. It's been around for ages in many, many states, in some parts of the country for about 100 years. And what it is it centers community and family and students at the center of the school. So you respond to their needs and assets, you capitalize assets, you respond to their needs, you center voice. There's much more collaborative leadership, distributive leadership. And it's not a program. It is just a way of being. It's a transformative process. It's a transformative model. And it's what I like to say is we aim to make public school public. And actually in November, I was on a site visit in Anaheim in collaboration with PAT to talk about community school launching and how this would be such a blessing in a lot of ways in our, not just PPS in Portland, but to our state. I also sit on some state coalition committees and doing some work there. That's the short video. We'll skip it, but I can make sure you get the link. That's from NEA. So the community school model. Hey, Robin, do you want me to try to share? Because we're cutting off. I don't know why. Maybe if you zoom out. So the community school model is most notably known as having pillars. They talk about a 4-pillar model, often with NEA, or sometimes you'll see 6. And so what I've done is I've taken these pillars, I'm going to roll these out, and I can contextualize them in terms of PBS. So the first one, and this is the 6-pillar model being collapsed into 4, is this idea of extended and enriched learning. And here you have rigorous community-connected classrooms. So you have a very coherent system of supports and academics and programming, whether it be Sun School, field trips, experiential learning, project-based learning, place-based learning. All the curricular pieces are tied, and also the community has a voice and shapes what that looks like. And so you have a lot of different types of learning experiences. You'll tap into partnerships, you'll tap into community. And this isn't just high school level where you see a lot of CTE programming pop up. This is also in elementary and middle school. You can do a really robust killer programming in elementary, actually. So this is often overlooked in traditional models. Lots of districts like to lean towards canned curricular tools, very prescribed curricular programming. And this is really moving outside of that and co-constructing, co-designing curricular tool usage, what happens in the classroom. There's a lot more collaboration with other folks in the classroom. You also have a shared understanding of benchmarks and accountability. And because there's such an investment from the community and from families and from students on what constitutes success, readiness, for our classrooms, the accountability and shared responsibility is really different, and it actually can be quite beautiful in the partnerships that you have. The next slide. Here we have some of that collaboration I'm speaking about. So in lieu of a site council, that's been, that mandate has been around for 1 million years. I would say there's a lot of outdated pieces to it that are steeped in some practices that tend to silence a lot of voices. Here you would have bodies that come together and collaborate, make decisions for your school, but you would use consensus model decision making. You would have representation from lots of different aspects of your community, and you don't move forward if they're not at the table. And what I like to think about it is, it's not like providing a seat at the table for folks. You're setting the table with them in mind. There is a difference in that. You have deep collaboration between educators, families, community, in either leadership teams or decision-making spaces or activities. You co-create and co-design. And so that is essential facet to the community school model. You have a lot more buy-in, and you have a lot more participation from families in this model versus just passively participating, because that's how the system is set things up. Next slide. And then we talk about how this redefines schools as hubs, right? The hubs of the community is what we want our community schools to be. And people are engaging in lots of different facets, like I mentioned. And with that comes a really different way of being, whether it's facility use, how we do meetings, how we communicate, what we're using. It is a shift. It is a transformational piece. But when you have really deep family engagement, true collaboration, it's a game changer on outcomes in many ways. And there's a lot of research out there to back this and for the community school model. And I can dip into that in a little bit. Yes, Casey. Casey, I'm going to move forward, and then if you still have a question, you can unmute and you can interrupt me. The last facet of this pillar is integrated systems of support. And so my position is grant funded. I know you just heard some budgetary talk earlier. My position is grant funded, and so we're 20 community school site coordinators in our schools, predominantly social workers, and that helped us from cutting social workers. We had our budget shortfall last year. And Communities in Schools is the national organization we partner with. They help many districts and states across the nation launch the community school model, but really their wheelhouse is integrated student supports. And here I have their model. So we're following it. There's two pieces to it. There's the model that you enact, but then there's also a data management system, which is wonderful, where we can track our impact, track our progress on how we're doing with school-wide supports and student supports. So the first step in the whole model is we do a needs and asset assessment of our communities. We do focus groups. We look at data from city, county, school district, sites. We triangulate everything and decide, okay, from these different data points, and the focus groups have a much heavier weight. And focus groups being families, students, community, staff, instructional staff and non-instructional staff, administrators. And we decide what should be our focus for the school year. From there, you make a plan, you have a goal. The goal should be situated in your overall school improvement plan. And then these site coordinators will start to have a caseload of students that they support. And of course, because I'm working predominantly elementary right now, it'll be for families as well. and they provide supports and they monitor and they figure out, is this making an impact? What I appreciate about their model, it's a little let deficit talk and it's more tiered supports. We don't tier students, we tier supports. We decide as a building, you know what, belonging is where we're gonna push our efforts because that's what the data is speaking to. So let's create tier 1 through 3 supports and activities and events to then catch students and families, right, and move towards goal and make progress. And then we'll monitor it through the year. And there's a lot of accountability built into this as well. And then at the end of the year, we use a 1-year cycle, even though we monitor monthly, we use a 1-year cycle to determine, okay, how did we do on our goal? Do we want to adopt this goal for next year? How do we want to move forward? And then we keep going. The needs and asset assessment is an iterative process. And we also in this needs and asset assessment do a community map of resources and assets too. So you can draw and see, okay, we have childcare over here. We don't have food support over here. We do have clothing support over here. And what partnerships or what connections and networks can we leverage to fill these gaps? Next slide. So currently out of the 20 schools, and I'll show you the list of schools in a minute, there's our 3 main goals. 2 of the schools adopted academic goals, and it was mostly because they had a very high population of multilingual learners. And so they really lean on academics and English proficiency. The other 18 schools are either working to very, very much zone in on decreasing chronic absenteeism or increasing student sense of belonging or sense of safety, but in the spirit of also tracking attendance. Because we know from our research literature that when a student feels a sense of belonging, right, it does have a direct tie to attendance and vice versa. You know, the slogan that Communities in Schools carries, which I deeply appreciate, is being present matters. It's not just putting the kid in the building, it's getting them situated so they're in a space to learn. And that's a continuum of support. That's just not putting body in the building. It's how do we help a learner sit in a classroom and be in a space where they can dive into literacy instruction or science or whatever it is. And for some students and families, there's a lot of different factors at play. And I believe that when you teach a student, you teach a family, and this is a very holistic model on education. So our next slide talks about what our community school site coordinators do. They do support and champion this philosophical shift in how we do school. They do some of the activities that I mentioned in the model. They do a lot of data tracking. They do a lot of coordination of services and wraparound supports. And this question always comes up, so I have it here. Yes, they work very closely with our Sun Schools coordinators. And in fact, I'm actually partnering with Walter Rodriguez, who's in charge of Sun for the county. And he and I are trying to figure out what does a PPS model look like of Sun community schools or PPS community schools, where we are so cohesive in our model and our funding and our staffing that you don't miss a beat. And so that's what we're working on right now. And I'm really excited for how that works. And we have a hand up. Go ahead. And is it, I was listening before, is it Sachin?
It's Sachin. And what's the Sun School? I'm not really clear on that. Is that like
Yeah, so 25 years ago, there was this partnership launch. Sun is an acronym that stands for Schools Uniting Neighborhoods. And the county, the city, and the districts, and this is in East County as well, came together and they said, okay, we're going to have some experiential learning, some after school programming, some childcare, perhaps some food support, different levels of wraparound services in different ways. And we're going to provide funds and we're going to come together collaboratively to launch these throughout various schools, usually Title I schools, but not always. And 25 years later, the collaboration has frankly fallen apart. Now Sun is very much seen as just an after school program and a set of things kids can engage in and maybe some food support, some pantry. And so I'm looking to bring back that collaboration and get back to the roots of it because it was a beautiful model 25 years ago. And it doesn't do them any service, especially when the county is advertising the budget shortfalls they have. It doesn't do any of us a disservice to be siloed. And so we're looking to collaborate. And next slide. So these are the 20 schools I'm working with now. Admittedly, launching anything with 20 schools is bananas. And because of the grant and the budget shortfall we had, we were in a space we were going to have to, if I would have staggered this, I would have had to lay off 14 social workers and then bring them back over time. And that didn't feel right. Our grantee was very happy to move forward with the grant in a different way and make sure we don't lose anyone. And so that meant that I carried the load of 20 schools of coaching and supporting and training and all of that. And I'm really happy that we're able to save the 20 folks we did, because they're all fantastic. These are all Title I, 2K8s and then 18 K5s. Next slide. So my next steps. You just saw the slide with the 20 schools. Part of my next step is to move this to a feeder pattern type style. Because a great question, which might be rattling around, is what happens if you're in a K5 in this community school model and we're up and running and we're wrapping around these families and then they go to 6th grade. And so I would like to create a feeder system. It's possible that at least 20 schools, some just really aren't into this model. It's just not working, in which case we'll start to shuffle some things around. I have some principals who are just chomping at the bit, like very excited for this. And so over time, assessing on my end, where is this really fitting? What communities should we start with? And then creating that elementary, middle, high school pipeline. So we have families that, let's say, they have siblings across the system, or they, again, promote out to the next level. How can we ensure that we're providing supports and a continuum of communication as well for the schools? And so also I'm continuing to foster a lot of connections and collaboration with our community, with partners. I'm really excited to be in front of parents and government officials. I am doing this for both two reasons. Sustainability, and you see the dollar sign there. We're not in a space where I can just believe the general fund will satisfy wraparound services and site coordinator staffing, which is a new position, right? I'm out there making connections, applying to grants, seeing what partnerships we can create. And the other pieces, of course, is I have to fund the site coordinators. That is the FTE portion of this. And then I'm also working on just enduring practices. Some of those slides you saw earlier, which is just being differently in a space as an administrator, with collaborative spaces, shared voice, distributive leadership, those things don't cost money. And I mean, maybe some food, right, for the event. But there's ways to go about this and just move the schools in a different space that's more democratized, and where it won't cost us any money. And so that's part of my aim as well. I'm also doing some training and support for administrators alongside of our communities and schools partner, and also our site coordinators and any other folks who are interested. I've had some secondary sites say, hey, I know we're not in the grant, but we'd love to learn more and we'd love to start some of this. And I'm like, let's do this. Let's meet. Let's get this going. And I continue advocacy at the district level, because what I've just showed you is something that's for 20 schools, and you've probably never heard of it otherwise. For this to be effective, it needs to be adopted at the superintendent level. It needs to be in every space. The transformation doesn't just come from the school site. The transformation is also needed in the district. Because how dare I launch a steering committee at a school site that has a lot of amazing asks of the system, and then set them up to go speak to the system and have it not be heard, right? So the transformation needs to be at all levels. I think of this as the sandwich analogy. I need advocacy and support here with our families and community, but then I also need support at our superintendent level. So, and I'm the meat, I'm the middle right now, the BB&J. With that, we have a hand up, and my last slide is just kind of, I'm interested in what stands out to you, what questions do you have? And I was trying to be really mindful of time, so I gave a much faster presentation than I normally do, but I'm happy to elaborate or answer any questions. And Daniel Levine, I see your hands up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I guess this is partially for you in your presentation, but also I guess just for the rest of the group and Robin, just sort of the, so I don't think any of us, maybe I'm wrong, would disagree with like programs like yours existing, right? More advocacy, more community, but in the context of this committee is the reason why we're learning about your programs, basically, since we're trying to decide how to spend this whatever $1 million on staffing, that there's an argument for a portion of that staffing funding should go to things like site coordinators or people that would be involved in your program. Is that sort of why we're discussing it? I guess that's my question.
I'm gonna let Robin answer some of that, but I also wanted to piggyback off of the previous presentation with Dr. Gilkey. So she presented to you successful school survey and different data points, and I just wanted to show that this model and the strategy is a response to some of those data points. So when I talked about climate and attendance, we use successful school survey. This is a model that is data driven on some of the data points that come through, actually many of the data points that come from the district system. So it is putting that work into practice in kind of a part two, but also I can let Robin answer some of this too. She's the boss.
So right now, what we're doing is setting the context. We have a very diverse committee with different experiences. We have parents who are kindergarten parents, like yourself, like new to PPS. We have parents who are high school students who have been in the district for almost 12 years. And the conversation about this funding model of parent fundraising for staffing has really focused on comparing funding between schools. And I think we kind of got stuck in that conversation for several years with the policy committee. And so the goal here is to not to deny or to avoid that topic. That will be discussed, and there was data shared that was requested ahead of the meeting, but also that this meeting and next meeting is presenting data and context for you to understand things that are happening in the district before we get into a conversation about how you could allocate funding. So this is not a pitch to fund community schools. This is to understand what is happening in schools, and to make sure that we have a broader view than just like our child, our school, like what is happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I guess I was just like the first presenter, like the main thrust seems to be that the main concerns about parents are staffing and class sizes for the most part. And this is a staffing committee, like that's what we're trying to figure out. And we're trying to figure out which schools are going to get what and how do we distribute it. So I'm just interested. So it seems like Dr. Williams's presentation is sort of showing an alternative space that could be incorporated into these ideas of how we fund or how we think about schools.
Yeah.
Understanding that.
And also how people come together to make decisions about schools, right? About resource. I know that you're representative of different clusters, and I know there's a diversity in how you engage in school and PBS, but I really encourage as much information as possible for all of you about what are the needs of the communities and what are the different communities, what are their assets in our model, what are their assets and how do the needs differ across communities. You might have saw in the 20 schools, one of them is Chapman, and people are very surprised by that. But the more you dig into that school, you're like, oh, that's a very good argument why they need a food pantry. They serve the downtown homeless population, right? So, but my Southeast schools don't get a lot of airtime either when it comes to staffing allocation or even partnership allocation, contract allocation. They don't get a lot of airtime often. And I know the Southeast Guiding Coalition, moment of time, did it surface some of the things that I do see when I go out there and what their needs are, which are wildly different sometimes than Northeast Portland, where I've spent most of my career. Yes, Audrey.
Yes, my question is kind of to piggyback off Daniel's, is how much does the equity lens that PPS has already proposed, as we see these numbers, we said they were vastly different. I think that's what Robin said than last year, but when I'm actually looking at those numbers, They're more extreme than the previous charge that I've done, as are the FTE, which is also, I think, I can do some graphs. I just did a prior run, but like, I think it's fair to note to everybody on this committee that there is already an equity lens that PPS applies onto the schools. And so how much are we in this committee supposed to take on the gravity? Because again, what you're presenting, I believe wholeheartedly in. But as we're as a committee looking at a formula that will continue to have people, my dog's whining in the background, for people to continue to donate within PPS to this larger parent fund, who are those people who have donated previously, and how does that overlay with what the equity lens is that PPS already has? So like if I look just off cuff for elementary schools, Rosa Parks gets $18,000 per student and Richmond gets $7,800 per student. So there is like, so within this committee, when there's already that application put on that, how much are we supposed to address the gravity of what you've also presented with the small amount? I mean, also with this 1 million, like, it's not like we have a larger, and as somebody also pointed out last week, how do we also apply that to a formula that will go on for years to come and incentivize people to continue to donate to this fund?
Robin, do you want me to take the per student question? So that number per student is, if you think of the overhead that it takes to run a building, regardless of population, if it's a smaller school, the number per student will be larger because there's an allocation of office staff, right? All of that.
But if you also take a class size overlay on that, and granted, I know that there's different things that we have support of outside of the school, but like my kids have 30, they've always had 30 people in their classrooms, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, like that's just something that we know in our community, and people are leaving over and over again. And we know that PPS gets its funding from the state by the amount of people who are enrolled in PPS. So like, I'm not trying to diminish, I'm trying to say like as a holistic picture and how our schools are funded overall, it does have an impact of if people leave the school system, that's money that the school system itself doesn't have to redistribute.
Absolutely. I'm going to agree with you. And that's why the community school model in my mind.
I'm just trying to understand like how we, like, where are we supposed to be taking that in all of this information within the context of this facilitated group and make that something that we're not trying to take in everything.
Well, this I just want to acknowledge that this is the first time we've had this committee, so we are building it as we go. And what we're starting from is kind of like understanding some of the dynamics that we see, and also widening our view and taking, into account experiences that happen across the district. So I think that Suzanne has also spent a lot of time with this heat map and wanted to share some perspective on that. And we haven't actually like presented it. I did share it in the materials, and we were going to talk about it today, but I'm going to let Suzanne and Session add their comments and then see if we have any more questions for Dr. Williams before we shift to talking about this a little more deeply with our other agenda items. Suzanne?
Oh, well, should we let Dr. Williams, my comments are regarding the heat map, so maybe we should let Dr. Williams finish and then I'll make my comments.
Any other questions for me? Session, is your question for me?
Kind of. This is for really anyone that can answer me. What do you mean, Miss Niche, by the sorry, I'm getting your name wrong, by gravity? I'm not really big on like corporates. I don't know what that means in the context.
I think we can,
how much we have to consider it, or
I think we can talk about that after we let Ms. Williams or Dr.
okay.
Williams go.
Yeah,
And
I figured it's just I wanted
Dr.
to see
Williams,
that clarified for
thank you
everybody.
so much for your presentation, and I wholly support everything you're
Yeah,
doing.
and you might see me. I would love to connect with some parent groups to, because family and community voice needs to be at the center of this. So however we can connect and start to get this movement going, I would be all over it. So feel free to reach out to me anytime, PPS email, phone, whatever works. And I really appreciate the space tonight.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, why don't we take Session's question first? Because that seems like a little bit maybe. I think he was asking Audrey to explain gravity or what your point was there, and then we'll go to Suzanne, and then we'll see who else wants to talk.
Station, is that right?
It's Sachin.
Session.
Sachin.
Okay.
The A is kind of pronounced like you, like an understanding.
Oh, session. Like that? Okay. So apologies. So I do have ADHD and I speak sometimes when I don't know exactly. So I think when I was saying the gravity, can you tell me the relationship? Because I think
I wasn't sure if you mean like the kind of the weight we should be putting on it, or if this is like a term that I just
no, I
don't
think
know
it's
about.
more of a like theoretical, like philosophical weight of like how we our understanding and how much we like perceive and take on is kind of
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's like flowing with it and giving space for others to also share their perspectives. Suzanne, did you want to speak?
Yeah, the heat map it's really frustrating for me because as the prior commenter mentioned, there are basic positions that a school has to fund. I mean, that's our core FTE within a school. And the two columns on the contrasting columns on the heat map, the first being students per FTE, and then the second being $20, $24, $25 per student, they don't even capture the same FTE allocations. One captures both school allocated FTE, and one captures one captures only school allocated FTE, and the centrally allocated FTE, and the other does not capture both. And then secondly, as as Ms. Williams mentioned, because schools have to fund core FTE, enrollment is a huge factor. So I sent to Robin, and I don't know if you can share this, share your screen, Robin, but I sent to you in an email an analysis of the heat map that shows you just how many schools are, say, funded at $12,000 per student versus $24,000 per student versus $8,000 per student. And what you find is that most schools are funded between $9,000 and $12,000 to $13,000. The majority of PPS schools fall within that. So I think you need to scroll. Yeah. So, and there are reasons why Rosa Parks is funded at 17. It's because it only has 172 students, but it still has to fund all that mandatory staff. And then if, in contrast, if you look at a school like Alameda or Richmond that has in the arena of 500 students, well, it's simple math. You're going to have more dollars per student in the schools with lower enrollment. So I just wanted to add that perspective to the heat map because, obviously not only should people take into consideration the achievement outcomes of the schools and how much funding that they're receiving, which PPS does, should not only take into consideration the demographics of that school, which PPS does, because we live in a segregated community, and some schools, students in those schools overwhelmingly enter the school with a lot more resources that they carry with them throughout their public education experience. But most importantly, and you saw this in the first presenter's slides, is all schools, if you look at the survey, all schools and parents are complaining about class sizes. So the heat map is really misleading. And I would love to see a if we're going to get into this, and if this is going to be a factor or indicator on how we decide to allocate funding as a parent committee, then we need to look at actual class size numbers, which PPS does have that data. Because my daughter attended a Title I school and had a class size of 31 students. And so I think there are misconceptions that there are only certain schools that, and I don't want to talk too much, but I apologize, that have large class sizes, because that's not the case. And so I hope we can recenter our focus on what the role of this parent committee is, in terms of, we're trying to decide a formula on how to spend funds that are privately raised in our schools. And it's clear that almost every school has issues with class sizes, but it's also clear that we cannot reduce class sizes in every school with private funds raised, at least based on past private funds raised. The most ever raised by foundations was $4 million. And that was back in 2018-2019 school year. So I just want to keep an open mind about what is, and maybe we could have other presenters who could talk to us about areas where the funding could go that would be most impactful for the most students, and perhaps the students with the greatest need. And then just quickly, I want to say one more thing, which is, I want to make it really clear, because some people are confused about this. PPS does not determine its per student funding based on whether or not parents can fund additional FTE. So it's been said in the past that some schools get less than others because PPS is counting on those parents to raise the funds through local school foundations. That was never the case. PPS accountants relayed that to our reform group. And the formula for that allocation is documented. It's part of their budgeting process. The community budget committees that's staffed by teachers and parents, they're aware of that formula and have access to it. So I just wanted to dispel that myth as well. And I'll stop.
Yeah, so I did want to mention there is a community budget review committee that also reports to the board, and you can I will send the link to, so it's easy for you to find, but there is they've done a deep, that committee is responsible for the deep dive of understanding how PPS allocates resources. And I don't think that we have time to replicate all of their work, but we can look, you could look on your own at their analysis and findings, and that could be informative. But so it's I don't want to say that it's not a factor or something to consider, but I don't think that it can be the sole basis of the decision making of this committee, and we want to be able to share other information as well. Audrey?
I think my question was a little bit misunderstood. I'm not trying to dive so much into the, I mean, I want that to be part of the context as long as we're providing these other things in the context. My question itself is, how much is our responsibility to overlay something that's already been overlaid? If we look at our schools, every school that, as we talked about Chapman Elementary earlier, every school has a microcosm within that school where we can't label any one school like you are just have more fun. You are just a higher income neighborhood and you are just a lower income neighborhood, because every one of our schools has that diversity within its system and has different needs. And I think our role is to look at this holistically. So I just want to make sure that, like, as we're looking at this, that we are looking at it with all of the information, and we're not just coming in as, and again, I do think we have to pay attention to who are the people that fund this and how does it get funded. And if we're going to make a formula for years to come, like how do we make all of that a part of the equation? So my question is really like, what are our components to the equation? Because I think once we start to understand what our components of the equation are more, then we can start to have the discussion of like how we make that a conversation. And I know, again, this is the first time, this is what we're all trying to do, but I don't think we can come in and say like, this half of the equation is going to equal X when it's this half of the equation and this half of the equation that actually ends up being the holistic response. I wanted to make sure I'm not trying to misrepresent and have the conversations about foundations versus not foundations. Again, that's not the conversations, but I think the context of what happened within that conversation over the years should be applied on some level, because it is why we're here today, and has some of the like community and parental and other assets that came in to make the funding what it is today. So like, I just want all of those things to be part of the conversation. I don't want it to dominate the conversation.
Okay. I just noticed the time. Sorry, I'm not very good timekeeper. We're at 7:02. Daniel, let's go to you, and then let's talk about the chair position.
I just wanted to quickly say that Suzanne, thank you, because I feel like that was extremely helpful information, and also very like centering. Because I guess my question, I think too, what I was trying to say is basically like, hey, we have $1 million to spend on staffing, and we have hundreds of schools, this huge amount of schools, all these different people, and so like, how do we even get started thinking about how we would take this finite amount of resources to be able to help as many people as possible, like Suzanne was just saying. So like, if I fully support that concept of like, if there could be sort of proposals or ideas of like what that small amount of resources could do to help the most people, or like how we would even start to figure that out. And so I feel like it would just help me understand like what we're doing and how we would get it done. So that was very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. And there, I think that we, I would like to propose adding another meeting next week. Originally, I had us meeting every 2 weeks for the first month, and then meeting every week in March. So, or after that, but I am, so, I think we do have a lot more to dig into, and this hour and a half goes by really quickly. So, is there any objection to adding next Wednesday to our meeting list?
We maybe look into 2 weeks out instead of 1 week out. I think for parenting, that might, I don't know, my schedule's jammed with kids.
Yeah, so we were already scheduled. Oh, what is happening here? Okay, we were already scheduling for March 12th. And the following is the 19th. I think. But what I was proposing that we also meet next week. And it is see the 12th and the 19th. Yeah, because we're not going to meet during spring break. I was hoping we were going to like make a recommendation, wrap up by the 19th. So it's a very fast timeline. The goal here, the reason for the fast timeline is so that it could go to the board of directors on April 8th. And they need to like it needs to be presented and they can't vote in that same meeting. So it still needs to then be pushed, another 2 weeks before they vote. And then that would allow if people know where this allocation is going, that there could be fundraising in the spring that could continue to support the concept. So I think it would be okay for individuals to miss the meeting next week. And everything will be recorded and provided. The only vote next week would be like for the minutes, and that could also wait too. So the there was one other set of data that I did provide the group, which was the enrollment of underserved groups. So if people wanted to look at that and the budget group and email any questions that you have, we can address those in the at the next meeting. We are also allowed to have like a work group if there was like a smaller group of people who wanted to meet and talk about other information or presentations that they want to see at future meetings. That is also allowable. What I would really love to do is have a vote for a chair because I think, and co-chairs, because that person could also be a thought partner in helping to set the agendas and the speakers that will come in the future. And I did speak with the board office about whether students could be serve as chair on this committee, and they said that students could serve as co-chair, but since it's a parent advisory rather than a student advisory, that they would not say that a student should be the chair. And we did have our 2 students were both interested in serving as co-chairs, and I wanted to suggest that you could both serve as co-chairs and be a part of the agenda setting and serve as backup if the chair is not available. And that way too, if somebody wasn't there, we would have 2 people that could serve in that role. So I'm wondering if that would be agreeable to our students serving in that way.
It works for me.
Good for me.
Okay, great. Could we, we're gonna do a vote and a motion and a vote on that after we discuss the chair as well, okay? So the other role is the chair, and I wanted to see who is interested in serving as the chair.
I would be willing to chair with the amazing future support.
Okay, and I think at the last meeting, Casey had expressed interest, and also Trina had expressed interest via email to me. So I want to confirm whether all 3 of you are interested in the chair role. Still, after this long enduring meeting.
I don't think Casey's here right now.
Oh, did Casey drop off? She was here earlier. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I don't see her here either. Okay.
If Trina would like to take on the chair position, I'm supportive of that.
Okay. And Trina, you're interested in serving in the chair, is that correct?
Yes, I'm interested in serving as chair.
Okay. Well, we postponed it at the last meeting. I kind of feel like we should move forward because of the short timeline. I'm thinking that Audrey was maybe volunteering because she thought there was nobody, and now she's just withdrawing her her interest. So do we have a motion for Trina to serve as chair and for Session and Annika to serve as co-chairs?
I'll make a motion.
Okay,
I can second that emotion.
thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Do we say aye or raise our hand?
Any opposed? I think we got everyone saying yes and everyone who's here. Great. Who seconded? Well, I didn't write it down. Sun, thank you. Okay. Great. Well, I'm sorry to keep you all over time today. Thank you so much for bearing with us. Feel free to email me if you have questions, and we will be in. I'll send an invite for the next meeting, and I'll do all future meetings so you have them all on your calendar, because I think we just had them listed, but you maybe don't have them on your
Hey,
calendar.
Robin, a quick request. Can you send out that class size data? And then is there a way to share some, I have some charts and graphs, and I would like to, just for us to look at as we have the conversation about kind of holistically looking across what different K through 8s and et cetera, just so like at a glance, everybody can digest the information at once. Is there a way for me to share that to this group without having a chat room?
Yes, let me just I think that you can send me data and I can post it on our website, because everything needs to be public, and I think I just need to talk to the board office about like sharing, because the authorship is, not the district then, if it's like coming from committee. So I need to find out how we do that, but I'm assuming it's allowed. And so please feel free to email me and I'll get that clarified and send an email update.
I'm sorry, I have one quick comment to follow up. Audrey, is maybe if we post it as like, are we gonna have public testimony, or I would love to open it up to hear from other parents in the community, even if it's just written, that, hey, we're out here, help. And then Audrey could also submit her charts as written testimony attributed.
Okay, yeah, let me get this clarified, because I'm not sure how the sharing of data and then the making it public, like all of that works. But I think having written testimony from the public is fine. I just am feeling really crunched for time for doing public testimony, to keeping to our hour-and-a-half agenda and this short timeline. So I am going to let you all go, have your evening back, and thank you so much for all your contributions and attention tonight. Really
Thanks,
appreciate
Robin.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.